Once upon a time, in Shimonoseki, Yamaguchi Prefecture, there was a temple known as Amida Temple, belonging to the Shingon sect. Within this temple lived Hoichi, a biwa player. Blind since childhood, Hoichi had been trained in the art of biwa narrative, and despite his youth, his skill surpassed even that of his master, the temple's abbot. Recognizing Hoichi's exceptional talent, the abbot had taken him into the temple. Hoichi was particularly adept at reciting the tale of the Genpei War, with his narration of the Battle of Dan no Ura moving everyone to tears without fail. The Battle of Dan no Ura, the final conflict between the Genji and Haika clans, ended in tragedy for the Haika, who were defeated. Every member of the Haika family, from women and children to the young Emperor Antoku, perished, sinking to the bottom of the sea. This sorrowful end of the Haika clan was what Hoichi excelled in narrating. On a humid summer night, while the abbot was away for a memorial service, Hoichi stayed back at the temple to practice his biwa. Suddenly, he felt the grass in the garden stirring like waves and stopping right in front of him on the veranda. Then, a voice called out to him, "Hoichi! Hoichi!" Unable to see, Hoichi responded, asking who was there. The voice claimed to be a messenger from a high-ranking noble nearby, expressing a desire to hear Hoichi's biwa and storytelling. Elated by the request, Hoichi followed the messenger. As they walked, the clanking sound of the messenger's armor became apparent, indicating that he was a warrior. They passed through a large gate and a spacious garden before arriving at a grand mansion. Inside, the sounds of silk garments rustling and armor clashing suggested a large gathering. A lady-in-waiting then asked Hoichi to perform the tale of the Haika, specifically the part about the Battle of Dan no Ura. Hoichi began his performance, masterfully weaving the sounds of the biwa with the narrative, bringing the battle scene to life in the grand hall. His performance was so vivid that it seemed to transport the audience to the battlefield of Dan no Ura. When he reached the tragic end of the Haika, the hall was filled with the sound of weeping, and for a while, no one spoke, immersed in the somber atmosphere. Afterwards, the lady-in-waiting conveyed the Lord's appreciation and his wish to hear Hoichi play for 6 more nights. She instructed Hoichi to return the next night and to keep these events secret from everyone. The following day, Hoichi was again escorted by the warrior to the mansion. However, upon his return, the abbot discovered him and inquired where he had been. Hoichi, honoring his promise, remained silent. The abbot, sensing something profound was at play, instructed the temple servants to follow Hoichi if he left again. That night, despite the heavy rain, Hoichi left the temple. The temple servants followed him but soon lost sight of him in the dark. Searching everywhere, they eventually found Hoichi at the graveyard, playing his biwa in front of Emperor Antoku's tomb, surrounded by countless will-o'-the-wisps. Convinced that Hoichi was possessed by spirits, they forcefully brought him back to the temple. Hearing of this, the abbot decided to protect Hoichi from the spirits by inscribing sutras all over his body. The abbot warned Hoichi not to respond to any calls that night, as doing so could cost him his life. That evening, as Hoichi meditated, the spirits called out to him again, but this time, they could not find him due to the sutras. However, they spotted Hoichi's ears, which had not been covered with sutras, and took them as proof of their visit. When the abbot returned and found Hoichi without his ears but safe, he realized his mistake in not inscribing the sutras on Hoichi's ears. Despite the loss, Hoichi was no longer troubled by spirits, and his fame as a biwa player only grew. Eventually, Hoichi became known as meaning nashi Hoichi, the earless Hoichi, renowned far and wide.